From the Panthers, we have General Manager Bill Zito and Head Coach Paul Maurice. Please raise your hand, wait for the microphone. We're going to start left side, third row, Jamieson.
I couldn't articulate very well the experience of last year or the unknown of it prior to. And then it happens, and you have this incredible experience with a group of guys that you care so much about. And then they come back next year, so God, you want to do it again, right? Like, it's such a wonderful thing. The difference would be, I would say this year maybe, by the time you get to the playoffs, I've enjoyed it a little bit more. You're allowed to enjoy it a little bit more. You're not more casual. As a matter of fact, they're probably more wired now. But your in-between days aren't as quite. And you're just so happy and thankful that you get to spend more time with each other and enjoy this stage.
I think the most important thing for us in attracting players is I think the players have understood now how much we've been empowered by ownership to try to do the right things. And it can't be overstated what the Viola family has done for us to allow us to implement, whether we need a new practice rink. Okay, and here you go, and it's beautiful. And to allow us the flexibility to try to do the things that we think are necessary to try to win and to try to have an excellent organization. And I think the players feed off that. And they know that if the chicken isn't right, that we're going to get new chicken. And it sort of transcends all that we do. It sounds silly, but it's true and it's real. The sun doesn't kill us. It's a nice environment to live in. It's a good place for families. It's a good place for singles. It's got a little something for everybody. And then I'll point to Paul and the coaching staff and that room. And players know, I think, I'm not going to go through each one, but so many of the players who have come to us have had career years, and it's a function of the coaches in the room. So players from the outside, I think the tax thing is marginal at best. And I think the real reasons are that trying to figure out a way to do our best to try to win.
Coming from a guy from the province of Quebec, taxes are not marginal in Florida, that's for sure. But that's another story.
And you'll write it, brother.
I would like to have your take of both of you on this. Bill, when you do a trade, you always expect it's going to be a good one. Would it be fair to say that you got an even better value of what you were expecting from Seth Jones and Brad Marchand? And I would like to have the take of Paul on the same subject, please.
Honestly, as advertised, both of them. Now, that's an easy question to answer because I had the luxury of being with Seth in Columbus, knowing what he could do, knowing him as a person, knowing firsthand how he would fit into our room and how he comports himself. And with Brad, I mean, the whole room knows. So there's no secrets of what he is as a player, as a competitor. Getting to know him a little bit more as a human, he's more special than I could have imagined on that front, as a teammate and as a character human. So from that standpoint, yeah, it was really pleasantly, it's like frosting on the cake.
Right side, first row.
The interesting part of that is what you don't know, and then Bill qualified that with his relationship with Seth, is you don't exactly, the thing we would have saw, how they're going to fit in your room. And that part's been brilliant, but I think it has as much to do, I mean, that's been the case with every player that we've brought in. It's the room. It's not me figuring out where they fit. That doesn't matter. They're just good players. They're going to be good players. But that room that we have is so welcoming, and so your personality fits almost no matter what it is. As long as you do the handful of things we all do together, there's not a problem. The more unusual your personality, the more you're going to fit in our room. As long as you do those 4 or 5 things, then everybody gets to be themselves. So both Seth and he's a quieter man than Brad, but we all are. Now that's just because he's relative to the rest of us. But he's been fantastic in that because he can just be himself, and we absorb that.
Well, it's probably a function of Sly, right? The common denominator might be the coach, who's a wonderful teacher, a wonderful person, who has extracted, as I alluded to earlier, has extracted the most out of almost like every defenseman who comes in here gets better. They improve. Even the veterans improve. I think looking back at Gudash, who was a veteran, an older player, came in, improved. And so Sly's expertise, his professionalism, who he is as a person, in tandem with what Paul had discussed earlier, that room, it's so special that it pulls, like they just pull the good qualities out of you. There's no better way for me to try to explain it than that.
It always is. There's a significant difference in the style of hockey in the East and the Western Conference. And I don't know, 15 years ago when they used to call California the Valley of Death, it was heavy over here in the West, and it was light and fast in the East. It's just flipped a little bit. We have a bit more of that, so it's a survival mechanism. The heaviest team that we've played in the last 3 years is the Boston Bruins. I mean, those two series, and we got out-hit in every one of them. So it's going to be physical. It's going to be really fast. It's going to be really skilled. I don't think there's one component that's going to take over it other than whatever one does, and then we'll point at that to be the difference. There's just a bunch of 10 factors here. Physicality is one of them. All of them are going to be, they've got enough players there. That's not going to be an issue for them. They're physical. Like Boston was physical. Toronto got quite a bit heavier over the last couple of years. So it's, the margin between the two teams and the ability to be physical isn't that wide. And that wasn't a tax comment. Sorry. I just don't think it's going to be that big a factor. We have a way to play. There's lots of teams that can play the game every way. We're just not one of them. We got to play it one way.
We'll continue to take questions. There are players from the Panthers at the pods. We'll go to
players.
You know, it's been well chronicled and spoken about, documented, his preparation, his attention to detail, and his consistency with the way he comports himself every single day. Preparing for practice, in practice, pregame, in the games, postgame, and there's a reason that he's been able to sustain that high level of play. That's the answer. Like it's not a secret. He's a pro. He's a pro's pro, and somebody that I think every player will tell you. If you want to know why a guy is successful, it's it's because of the way he prepares and the way that he does his job.
I think maybe include the Oilers in on this. I think we both have a defined strength that over 2 years you would say that's what this team is really good at. They're an incredible offensive team with those two players, but as a team, they play that game very, very well, and our numbers over the last 3 years, but the last 2 years, we were a real good defensive hockey team. Our analytics are pretty good in that. But both teams, and it's not their weakness, they made another part of their game stronger, so their defensive game is better. Some of that's just, when you get a good coach like they have here, each year their parts of their game just keep getting better just from familiarity, from doing it more than 1 year. So they've become a better defensive team, and our offensive game has improved. Seth Jones, Brad Marchand comes in, but also Anton Lundell, Lusterin, and guys that were third and fourth line guys who are 21 years old. They're just a little bit older. So we can put a few more pucks in the net. They can defend a little better, but it doesn't change the base strength. They're a really unusually built offensive team, and we've been pretty good defensively.
take a few more questions. Right side, third row.
Question for Paul. What makes your team's forecheck so effective in your mind? And what changed in the Toronto series from the early games to the end of that series where you weren't giving up as much on the counter?
We come out of the Tampa series, and Tampa plays almost systematically the same game that we do, but the opposite end of the spectrum in the style. They'll stretch all over the place. So we thought we were prepared for that, but it was a major shift going into Toronto. Just the systems are all completely different. And we struggled with that for the first game or two. It was a big change. Our forecheck is good because we make the right decisions at the line. We don't dump every puck. I don't want them to dump every puck. But we also aren't going to try to make a play at the line every time. And over time, the players have got a pretty good idea what's coming next. He's going to put that puck deep, or there's a play to be made. And if you can figure that part out, what you're doing, and you get to be at a fairly high percentage rate of being right, then you'll play faster. So that way your forecheck's a little faster. It's easier to set it. We were late on our forecheck in the first 2 games in Toronto. Their neutral zone defense was different than Tampa's, so our decisions had to change, and we were late with changing those. And so we were a little late with everything that we did, and then we kind of figured it out. I think the Oilers are more structured defensively in Toronto, but that's a Western Conference thing, right? Craig comes over from the West. There's more teams playing that kind of Vegas, Edmonton, Winnipeg, just more teams playing that game. Well, if I could, right, I'd share that with everybody, and I wouldn't tell you here now because that would be worth a lot. He is an unusual player, and this is the best I can come up with. There's a certain intensity level and a certain amount of chaos in playoffs that's not there in the regular season. Just the intensity levels out there. And he needs that. He needs to operate in that band of intensity and chaos. And when he does, everything comes from him. He's making passes, he's making plays, he's barred down. It's the right frequency of hockey for him to be at his best. And he's been a good player. And then this year in the regular season, he struggled a little bit. The intensity was different, right? He was trying to find it. This was not a work ethic issue. That guy works his butt off every day, but he was going one way, we were going the other, and he just couldn't find that rhythm. And the drop the puck in the playoffs, they go, oh, there he's back. Everything seems to have fallen into place for him.